heavy equipment is not used all the same. It depends on whether it's mining or farming or construction. So each piece of equipment is going to have a different journey, an environmental journey, how the users are actually taking care of it, right? So we as kind of general consumers, oil changes are kind of a baseline. You'd be surprised how many users don't really follow the rules and the maintenance schedules of these. So each piece of equipment is going to have a different journey to begin with.
Welcome to Agile Talks. I am Ryan. That is Mark. Mark, how are we doing today?
Back again, baby. Ready to have a good conversation.
Back again.
Back again.
I'm here again. Yeah, it's like, what is it, Godfather Part 2? It's like I keep trying to leave, but you keep pulling me back.
I told you, there's no way out, man.
All right, so today, no way out at all. All right, so today we're going to talk about OEMs and the aftermarket gap. So this is something I know that you and your organization do all the time, right? It's kind of your bread and butter. But this idea of filling in that gap in between you have a big, heavy piece of machinery that we'll be talking about today, right? And parts break on it. These machines last for 10, 15, 20 years. The manufacturer discontinues maybe some of the components or some of the parts inside of that machine. And there is a gap, right, where they can't get replacements if you're an end user. And this is drastically different when you think about it for the car or automotive, because I can go on a website right now and find 15 different people who make that exact part for my 1995 Toyota Corolla, right? So you want to give a little bit of background of why this happens in heavy machinery versus other automotive or other transportation markets?
Sure. I think the biggest thing is the math. The math within heavy equipment is there's a minimum quantity trap, right? So when you look at keeping tooling alive, finding suppliers that will support high mix, low volume, the math just doesn't make sense in heavy equipment versus automotive. In the example that you gave, there may be a million of that type of vehicle on the road. So the math makes sense. I think when you look at it traditionally, there were two choices. You either carried a lot of inventory and hoped, maybe not hoped, but planned for that part to break. So the inventory put you in a good place to be able to react to that. Or you simply just started to walk away from that business. And we can touch on why that is such a risk for so many companies. And we can also talk about the opportunity to be a first mover with some of the new technologies that's out there and create this whole new dynamic of customer relationship. But the simple answer is math.
Math. It's just math. Actually, your response should have just been math and then just being silent.
That's it.
Like math. It's like when my son asks me questions and I don't know the answer and I'll just yell out science to him.
Yeah.
And then he just looks at
Google.
me like I'm a weirdo.
Just Google.
Google it, buddy. All right. So then let's talk about the risk here, right? Because I can imagine that if I'm running a heavy duty like I'm running a large mine, right? Let's say I'm Rio Tinto, okay? Mm-hmm. And I got mines all over the world. Mm-hmm. And I use one of the big OEMs for my equipment. And I got 50 dump trucks. And I go and find out that all the parts for those dump trucks are discontinued, right? And they still maybe have 5 or 10 years of life, but odds and ends pieces that are breaking that don't stop the vehicle from actually working. but do make it maybe unsafe for whoever is inside of the vehicle or for people around there. I'm assuming that doesn't go over well with Rio Tinto talking to whatever manufacturer has now discontinued parts for their 50 dump trucks.
It doesn't. And I think that the example that you gave is actually a great one. So heavy equipment is not used all the same. It depends on whether it's mining or farming or construction. So each piece of equipment is going to have a different journey, an environmental journey, how the users are actually taking care of it, right? So we as kind of general consumers, oil changes are kind of a baseline. You'd be surprised how many users don't really follow the rules and the maintenance schedules of these. So each piece of equipment is going to have a different journey to begin with. But the challenge is that when you start talking about discontinuation, it is the moment of maximum customer vulnerability. So when that customer, if you're Rio, you reach out and you say, okay, now I have 50 pieces of equipment that are no longer functional, either from a safety standpoint or a functional standpoint. That is when a customer needs you most. And the reality is, many OEMs don't look at it, but it is the most vulnerable the OEM is going to be in that relationship. So when you think about selling a piece of equipment up front, everyone's excited. It's a new investment, but where the hook is on the back end, right? And that is if you don't have the ability to give a customer at least a plan B or another option to keep that piece of equipment running, you have now just exposed that relationship where they may not come back next time. And that's kind of this loyalty cliff. That's where we think everything is okay. We assume we're in tight, that we have a great relationship. But even use yourself as a consumer. We typically focus on that one or two really bad instances or situations that we're put in versus the 10 amazing ones. That's just how we're wired as humans, right or wrong. So the more tricks that you have in your bag to mitigate those really extreme moments that force your customer to make hard decisions, the better.
Do you think that if you were one of these large manufacturers or any manufacturer trying to kind of mitigate this issue, do you think, or do you see groups being proactive about it, where they're actually reaching out to their customers and saying, "Hey, we have an alternative path moving forward, and it's additive manufacturing. So yeah, we are discontinuing all the parts for XYZ line of equipment, but don't you worry, we got your back. Here's the solution." Or do you see them being more, not reactive, but like, I'm a customer, I'm coming to you going, "Hey, we had an accident and one of our panels, one of our side panels got significantly damaged. We need to replace it." And then I find out that there's no other options. And now I know you've joked about it before. I got to go look in India to see in like scrap yards if they have
exactly.
side
I
panels.
got to go junkyard dive and dumpster dive to try to find some of these parts. That is a very real situation.
All right, yeah, I got to look at my fleet and see like, well, which one is in the worst condition? Let me salvage. We're gonna scrap that one, and we're only gonna buy one new dump truck instead of 3 new dump trucks. So, do you think it's beneficial for these groups to be proactive about it? Do you think customers would even value them being proactive about it and announcing it and talking about it that way? Or do you see it more as a, hey, this is an option when you come to me?
I think it's an amazing opportunity. I would say to date, the majority are still pretty reactive. And, it's one of those situations that the majority of OEMs are just trying to manage the warranty window, right? So when you sell a piece of equipment, it's like, all right, we're now on the clock. Let's get through the warranty window. And once the warranty window is done, we can kind of just move on. And that again goes back to the inventory, the constraints within the supply chain, the way that we've set up kind of the math to make money at a lot of these parts. So once that window is closes, everybody kind of takes that deep breath and moves on. The challenge is that you still have a ton of equipment in the market that still needs these items. So when you think about the opportunity that additive can bring to it, you potentially could be a first mover and really being strategic versus just reactive on how do you sunset these parts. Maybe it's not forever, but maybe it goes from a 10 or 15-year window to a 20 or 25-year window where you're literally printing things on demand. You no longer have to carry inventory. And yeah, maybe the cost from production parts into this aftermarket world are more expensive, but what you're doing is you're at least giving the customer the choice, right? So imagine being empowered to say, listen, all right, it's time for me to make the choice to sunset this piece of equipment because it's simply too expensive to keep on the road, in the quarry, on the construction site, whatever it may be, versus it's going to cost me X to replace these three parts. I'm going to get another 5 to 7 years out of a piece of equipment. I'm going to make that investment. You've now taken the onus off yourself as the OEM to be the bad guy, and you've empowered now the customer to make the choice. That is game changing. So to be a first mover in this world and really create that secondary life cycle of production is game changing, because now what you've done is you've made yourself stickier to the customer. You've given them less reason to walk away. And now you've extended kind of this other profit center that, frankly, Ryan, a lot of companies aren't even looking at right now. And this is high margin, really good business that, to be frank, they just don't have the time or the capability to focus on. But I would guarantee if you take a couple weeks to review a project, understand what it looks like, you'd be pretty surprised on what the potential is.
I mean, and I would also think like if I was, again, one of these large OEMs who are going to a company like Rio Tinto or some of the other large mining and manufacturing or construction companies, right? And I'm trying to, I don't want to say wine and dine them, but like I'm trying to win over a majority of their business or get them to transition to me. It would be extremely valuable as a salesperson if I'm doing a presentation or talking to these groups going like, not only are we covering you during the warranty period, but we also have something for you afterwards. Okay. We're not just going to abandon you. And here's what that looks like.
Yep.
And for me, again, if I was on the sales end, that's what I would do. And then if I was on the purchasing end, that would be something that would be value added to me. So I 1,000% agree with you. And we don't have to go into details about this, but I'm sure anyone listening who's from this world of heavy machinery, do you want to give like 30 seconds of like reassurance that additive manufacturing can handle heavy equipment environments? Because I would assume that, a lot of people are thinking like of their little kids' fidget spinners.
Yeah, I would say, we're happy to have the conversation and put our theories, put our work to test. In many of the cases, that's exactly what we do is we go into an OEM and say, hey, give us a list of your top 10 biggest offenders, or where a supplier has gone out of business, or you see a longevity in demand that you just can't support. The team and I get very, very creative to kind of prove you wrong, right? A lot of these conversations are not kind of open-ended where, hey, we believe in the technology, here's the green light, go get it. It's very trial and tribulation of proving that these things can be done. And I would say very often the internal teams are blown away with the capabilities that we have and the solutions that we offer. So that would be my challenge. Put us to test, make me put my money where my mouth is, type of thing, and let's have a conversation.
I think that's. I'd like to sit in those meetings, right?
Hey,
Just
listen, don't jinx
challenging
yourself.
someone, or Or not, yeah, I've somehow talked my way into this podcast. Now I'm going to talk myself into one of those meetings.
Yep.
All right, awesome. Well, thank you, Mark. I hope you have a great rest of the day. And this is Agile Talks.
Thanks, Ryan. Appreciate your time. Have a good day.